Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jay over at Monarch Housing. We are very grateful to have you all with us today on this webinar. We're going to be talking mostly, if everybody's ready to go, about the deduplicated data from the point in time count for NJ Counts 2014. And predominantly, we're going to be talking about how to understand and navigate through the different tabs on the Excel spreadsheet that was sent to you, the final PIT data. We are going to start, however, just by doing some housekeeping. If you do have a question during the course of the presentation, only our audio is enabled. So if you do have a question, you can go into your side control panel, and under the questions heading, you can type in a question, and we will try to get to as many of them during the course and after our presentation as possible. Okay. Also, we are now going to move on to just a little outline of what we're going to be talking about today. So our agenda is understanding the spreadsheets, and then specifically moving on to explain how we have deduplicated the data so far at Monarch. We had a very specific process that we went through. We're going to go over that, explain to you why we did what we did, and then from there, the next point will be working with the duplicates tab that is in your final data spreadsheet, because that is where we did all our deduplication, and we want you all to understand what fields we were looking at so that if you have any other questions or suggestions for deduplication, that you can address those in that tab accurately as well. And then finally, we're just going to wrap up with some next steps that we need everyone to be mindful of, and kind of the way that we're going to move forward communicating regarding this deduplication process with you. All right, so we are going to, that was the shortest PowerPoint presentation ever. We're going to escape PowerPoint, and we are going to move along to Excel right away. And hopefully you all can now see the spreadsheet that's going to be our presentation spreadsheet. Obviously, the names have been changed to protect the innocent here, and this is kind of a blend of multiple spreadsheets that we sent out to everyone. So hopefully we can just talk about the spreadsheets themselves and not the nitty-gritty of each individual record. All right, so we're going to start right here. As you can see down on the lower left-hand corner in my tabs, I'm in the raw data tab. Okay, so as was explained in the email that we sent out to you, the raw data tab really just contains all the point in time count responses that Monarch received and collected from both HIMIS for agencies that used HIMIS for the count, and SurveyMonkey for those who did paper surveys. And really important to remember about this raw data spreadsheet is that it includes potential duplicate records. Okay, so this is the raw data, meaning that this is exactly what we pulled from both of those data sources, HIMIS and SurveyMonkey, and there could be records in here that are duplicates. Okay, so we're just going to keep going through the navigation first, and we'll come back and address other issues in these tabs later on. But the next tab to the right is the initial summary tab. You will recognize this, many of you, from something that we sent out earlier, just as a little teaser or precursor to releasing the data. And there are two major sections to it, two tables. The first obviously has the title SurveyMonkey data, as you can see, and this data table represents the total number of SurveyMonkey responses that were collected by the location where the individual, or household, I mean, stayed on the night of the count. And this does also include duplicates. Okay, so there are potential duplicate records on this tab as well. Really, down at the bottom, all you're seeing here in terms of distinction is that whereas these records here in the SurveyMonkey data table represent the responses collected, these down here represent the total number of individuals counted from HIMIS. Okay, so the total number of clients that were actually recorded as opposed to the total number of surveys on the top table. So there are two distinct units of measurement here. And also to remember, this is counting everyone, every type of survey that came in, depending on where they said they stayed on the night of the pit count. In terms of counting folks as homeless, households and individuals from the following categories were counted as homeless by Monarch unless otherwise specified by the county. Okay, so we have a list of them right here, but those include on the street, an emergency shelter, transitional housing, hotel, motel paid for by agency, domestic violence shelter, apartment from Board of Social Services, temporary rental assistance, hotel, motel paid for by agency, apartment, oh, I think I already said all that stuff. Oh, safe haven, yeah. So, and youth shelter, and sorry, that was my mix-up. So we have this list here for your reference. If you have any questions about what we counted as homeless, or if you want to be sure that your request was honored, we did make sure that counties that had requested specific groups be excluded from that homeless definition, then we did that. But if you have any further questions on that, you can contact us. Okay, we're going to move along to the next tab here, and that is the duplicates tab. As you've seen, we've kind of tried to blow it up a little bit so you can see the individual level records. But the reason that these records here are highlighted in red is to indicate that they were deduplicated, okay, by Monarch. But every single record, as you scroll down the duplicates list, every single record on this list was flagged as a duplicate by one of two unique identifier codes that we generated using the identifying information of each individual record. So you can see that these first four columns indicate those unique identifiers. Okay, so these two levels were, one was a lower level, which just used the first and last initials, age and gender of the individual, and the deeper level identifier added the middle initial and second letter of last name to do additional kind of a deeper level of deduplication. So as I said, the records highlighted in red were the ones that we have already eliminated, and hold some of your questions for later on regarding more in-depth stuff about this tab, because we are coming back to it to discuss it in further detail. Okay, the next tab to the right, as we've gone from duplicates to the right, is deduplicated data. This is basically the raw data minus the duplicates tab equals the deduplicated data tab. This is all of the data that was collected minus all the duplicates that Monarch has already removed. Okay, so any records highlighted in yellow on this tab that you might see in your own spreadsheets will indicate, I think there's one down here somewhere, but those records that are already highlighted in yellow indicate that there was an answer, there we are, an answer to the first question on the survey, where did you stay on the night of January 28th, that needs clarification. Okay, so as you can see, these records are highlighted in yellow. That is because someone answered other, and then the answer that was written in was unclear. We are going to make sure that these are clarified so we know how to define these folks as homeless or not homeless to count in your count. And if you want to begin making those changes, you can contact us, and there's going to be a little more information on the next steps to doing that later in the presentation as well. Okay, so that's the deduplicated data tab. And finally, we have the all-important HDX tab. Okay, this is a little bit large amount of information to digest on these tables, and to really understand what you're looking at, I am going to pass you all along to Thaisa, and she is going to enlighten us about what we're looking at here.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. So what you see before you is the HDX tab, which is different from the version that HUD had required communities to submit in the past. HUD has now, for this 2014 count, requested more information be submitted regarding the people that are identified as homeless in your community. What they've included on the HDX summary includes gender, ethnicity, and race. And they've also kind of altered the way that we're collecting information about families, individuals, youth-only households, as well as veterans. So I'm going to go through the top summary tables and then go through some of the bottom summary tables as well. The first table that you'll see in the that's on your screen is for households with at least one adult and one child. These are for the families. This is only families, excuse me, only families, which means that there's one adult over the age of 18 and one child under the age of 18 in the household. What we've done is we've counted all of those families that are in emergency shelters. This can include traditional emergency shelters, hotels, motel placements by an agency. For some communities, this also includes TRAs and youth shelters, domestic violence shelters. Transitional housing is clear in terms of what we counted there. And then unsheltered, we counted anybody who indicated that they were on the streets. The total for this section just reflects the total number of households and persons in households. So the total number of families, for in this case, is 97 families. And out of those 97 families, there are 286 people in those families. One of the things we'd like to point out in this table is that as you take a look at some of the more detailed information about the families in this community, you'll see that some of the numbers don't add up. So if you take a look over here, we identify that there's a total of 286 people that were identified as being families that are homeless, either in the emergency shelter, transitional housing, or unsheltered. When you go down to the gender tab, you'll notice that there's only 281 people identified as either female, male, or transgendered. This is a result of the surveys that were submitted having no responses. And I'm just going to take you quickly back. If you look down at the bottom, I'm going to go to the De-Duplicated Data tab, and I'm going to scroll up and go over to the gender. And so in column T, which is gender, I'm going to scroll down, and you'll notice that right here we have a set of surveys that have no response for gender. As a result of this, on the HDX Summary tab, we have a total of 281 individuals who have identified a gender, and we're missing gender for 5 individuals. So those correspond to the no response pieces that you just saw in the De-Duplicated Data tab. The same is true for ethnicity and as well as for race. These numbers don't all add up to 286 because there were no responses in some of the surveys that were submitted. The next tab I'm going to jump over to is we're going to get back to the no response piece, but from the next thing I want to jump over to is the second table that you have at the top is households without children. So this is single adults, single male and female, as well as adult couples. So any adult groupings that had no children under the age of 18 were included in the individuals tab. You'll also notice that on the individuals tab we have emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe haven as possible options for your community. Please note if your community has something indicated that you know your community doesn't have, you will have to look at your raw data from your SurveyMonkeys to ensure that the information was entered correctly. We do know that there are not that many communities that have safe havens. However, in some communities, some SurveyMonkey surveys that were returned indicated that an emergency shelter was a safe haven, and as a result, you might see some numbers in the safe haven category even though you do not have safe havens in your community. So if you do see something that looks a little bit off with regard to the categories that are identified, you'll need to take a look back at the De-Duplicated Data tab and identify those survey responses that correspond to the information that looks off so you can ensure that the locations are accurate in your surveys. The last table on this top portion of the chart is for youth-only households. This is for households where surveys have identified youth who are between the ages of 18 and 24 or younger and have no adults over the age of 24 living with them and have been identified either in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe havens. The top part indicates the number of households. The second part indicates the number of persons. The second part indicates the number of persons in the household. Sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Here we go. Youth households. Sorry, I was on the wrong chart. So youth households. So as you'll see in this case, there were 5 households identified as having only youth. 2 of those households were individuals, young individuals that were on their own, and 3 of those households were groupings of youth that were staying together in one unit. We would like to caution everybody about the youth-only table. This information is based on the information that has been returned for the surveys, and so if there were any missing information about any members of the household, you could get a false response in terms of youth-only households. In this particular case, with this survey, even though it identifies, in this community, it identifies that there are youth-only households in their community, the reality is that these were youth that were part of a family in which they did not enter an age for the adult in the household, and as a result, the household was counted as a youth-only household. Because we did not have an age for the adult in the household, we really have no way of correcting this information to reflect that it is not a youth-only household, and we can only go with what we have. So we ask all communities to take a very close look at your youth-only households and ensure that the information for each adult in the household, if they are present, is accurate. Is accurate and is up to date, and is included in the de-duplicated data tab that you have on your surveys. And I'll just say that this is very important. One of the ways that we know that this information for many of these communities is inaccurate is because in this particular instance, these 7, 8, 9 youth that are identified as unsheltered are all under the age of 10 in hotels or motels. So we know that this is not really possible for there to be children placed in hotel or motel by the Board of Social Services under the age of 10 without a supervising adult. So we ask you to please double check your youth-only households. The next part of the table, so the first part just deals with the total. If you want to have a total number of people that were identified as homeless in your community, you would need to add the total columns for each category. So households, families, the total for individuals, and the total for youth households would need to be added together to get the total number of people that were identified as homeless in your community. The second part of this chart, or this tab, deals with veteran-only households. As in the table above, the first chart deals with veteran families, and the second chart deals with veteran individuals, which also includes veteran couples, adult couples with no children. As stated above, you want to double check and ensure that the gender, ethnicity, and race all add up to the total number of people identified. If they do not add up, it is a result of information not being completed on one of the surveys, or either in HIMIS or in SurveyMonkey, for that particular category for someone who falls into that category. And the last part of the worksheet deals with the subpopulation information. The subpopulation information only pertains to adults in the household. So we've only collected information based on the adults in the household. The only exception to that is the chronically homeless families. Chronically homeless individuals, in order to count this, we identified the people who were homeless for 1 year or longer and had a disabling condition, or the people who have had 4 episodes of homelessness in the past 3 years and also have a disabling condition. The chronic homeless definition only pertains to people in emergency shelter, safe havens, or who are unsheltered. So persons in transitional housing that meet that definition do not qualify as chronically homeless. For chronically homeless families, as long as an adult head of household met that definition, then we counted the full family. The next part of the subpopulations that we looked at are those with serious mental illness, substance abuse disorders, HIV/AIDS, and victims of domestic violence. Again, all of this information was collected in question, the de-duplicated tab. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the top. On the de-duplicated tabs in the questions, you'll see at the top here we have questions specifically asking about veteran status, mental health, substance abuse, physical disability, developmental disability, chronic health conditions, HIV/AIDS. And that is where we collected the information regarding the subpopulations that people might fall into. So these numbers relate directly to what people answered on the surveys in the Deduplicated Data tab. The one thing that we wanted to just clarify with everyone is that, as in the example above, the total over here does not equal the totals for each of the specific characteristics of the household. So for example, there were 286 people, but there was only information about the gender for 281, information about ethnicity for 240, and information about race for 222 individuals. For the HDX system, HUD does require that communities have to have numbers that all add up. So you would not be able to submit HDX data in this manner. The system would not allow you to submit the data because these areas do not add up to the total of 286. In order to address this issue, communities can deal with it in a couple of ways. If you choose to address the issue of missing information by deleting records that have missing information from your deduplicated data set, we're asking that you please, on the deduplicated data, highlight the records that you would like to delete in blue. I'm sorry. If you'd like to, again, I'm going to repeat that. If there's any records that you would like to delete from your deduplicated data in order to have the numbers add up, in order to have your totals add up together, if you are trying to have the information match, you want to highlight any records on the Deduplicated Data tab in blue. If you are going to make the numbers add up by looking at the records that have missing information and adding in the missing information, we ask that you add in the information on the Deduplicated Data tab and highlight those in yellow. Again, if you're going to update the records by adding in the missing information, we hope that it will be happening through conversations with the agencies completing those surveys and tracking down paper survey forms. If you're going to update any data, we ask that you please make the updates directly to the Deduplicated Data tab and highlight those updates in yellow. I believe that is all I have for the HDX summary and the different nuances with this tab. Again, we will have an opportunity to take questions at the end. And now I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin to go over the deduplication process that we went through.
Okay, hello everyone. I just wanted to say too that everything that we're talking about will be posted in a PowerPoint format. So in case you're trying to write notes on what we're saying, everything will be posted so you'll know how we did the deduplication and everything through that. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to explain to you how we went through with our deduplication process. We went back and forth a couple times about how we were going to make the deduplication, and finally, we came up with kind of as strict as possible. We do plan, as I believe we've mentioned at all of the meetings, plan to get feedback from all of the continuums, and this will definitely be one area that we'll need to get more feedback from, so that for next year, maybe we can go about the deduplication process a little bit differently. So anyway, for this year, what we did is we have this duplicates page in which Jay explained there's a unique code for all entries. Any of the entries that came up as duplicates were moved to this tab in order for us to look at a little bit closer. So now so there were three main types of duplications that we found, and I'm just going to go into how we made the decisions to either highlight them in red in order to be deleted or to keep them in there. The first type is the SurveyMonkey to SurveyMonkey duplicates. You can know it's a SurveyMonkey form by the household ID. So the household ID is column E. All the SurveyMonkey entries have a household ID of about a $3 billion number. All the HIMIS ones, as you can see, these are all HIMIS ones, have a much smaller number. So that's a pretty sure giveaway. Also, in columns F and G for agency and program, those columns are only filled out for SurveyMonkey entries because obviously there was no surveys completed, so there wouldn't be any agency or program completing them for HIMIS forms. Okay, so if we look at these two lines, so these two are two SurveyMonkey entries that have the same unique code. You can tell, they're from the same agency, they have the same where they stayed last night. In order for us to delete a SurveyMonkey record, if it was SurveyMonkey to SurveyMonkey, it needed to match exactly. So that means that every column all the way across needed to match. We chose this because it was too hard really to pick which fields we thought would be the best match out of just simply SurveyMonkey to SurveyMonkey. The only other way that a SurveyMonkey was deleted was if, say, everything matched all the way up until a certain point. So say all the way up until AQ, everything matched. And then moving forward, one survey was completed and the other one seemed as though the person just submitted it without actually completing the form. If that was the case, then the one that was incomplete was highlighted in red to delete as the duplicate, and the one that was completed was kept. As you can see, there's quite a few that seem to be the same person based on, just basic identifying information and possibly their disabilities, but it could be just one field that really threw it off and we ended up leaving it in there. The next possibility was if it was a HIMIS to HIMIS comparison. I will say there was probably only a few instances of these, but they did happen. So I have an example. If we look, so 80 and 89, these two are all the same. So the main factor for these was their household ID. Since HIMIS has the ability to deduplicate records if their household ID was the same, it is the same person. You can see, it's only their self. They were in this instance, they were actually in the same agency, but the agency has two different types of programs, and they were actually entered into HIMIS on both of them on the same night. For instances like this, we looked at the length of stay, which was 25 days and 13 days, and we kept the one that had the shorter length of stay. The reason we chose that was because obviously they were entered into the program at a more recent date, which means that most likely the original program just forgot to discharge them. So those were those. Again, that was only a few instances, but they were there. The last instance, the last option for deduplication, and really I think the most common, was SurveyMonkey to HIMIS. Again, I have another example. So for these two, when looking at HIMIS and SurveyMonkey, the fields that we looked at that needed to match were where they stayed on the night of the count, so that's column H, their length of homelessness, which is O, and then their identifying information, which goes from U through AB, so their initials, age, gender, race, and ethnicity, and then their disability and their sources of income. We chose these because we know that obviously all HIMIS is not necessarily up to date, but we knew that these were the fields that we thought were most appropriate, that if they matched, we felt that comfortable that they were a duplicate. With this in mind, there are quite a few in which, agency, the person was identified as staying in a program, but based on those criteria, especially disabilities, they were just slightly off by one, which could just be a lack of updating HIMIS. But for, the way that we deduplicated, they weren't counted as a duplicate. So there were quite a few that we felt like could actually be duplicates, but based on our methods, we weren't able to actually delete any. The only other time a record was deleted is if there was no identifying information and they weren't part of a household that had complete information. So obviously if, a survey was entered and everything for the head of household was entered, but then there was no identifying information for the children, that was kept as long as the head of household wasn't a duplicate. And then you can see the ones at the top here that are all in red don't have any identifying information, so we're not able to, you know, confirm that they're not a duplicate, so we deleted them. I will say most of them, too, where they came from, it was either a permanent housing destination, or they didn't even answer where they stayed, so we wouldn't be able to classify them even if we did have some sort of identifying information for them. So basically, what we're asking is for you guys to kind of take a look at this duplicates page and to decide if you want to move forward in completing any further deduplication. It's optional. You know, you're not required to. If you decide that you're okay with how the data looks and you want to use those numbers as they were presented in the HDX, you know, you don't have to really go through this and find if there's any more duplications. I know some people have called saying that their numbers seem high, and it's most likely because of how strict we were with the deduplication process. I will say one of the first things you can do is, you know, when going through your list and finding people that have the same unique identifier, I would first see if who entered that SurveyMonkey survey and what agency entered, if it was either in HIMIS or the other SurveyMonkey survey, and just see if there's a pattern. So I know a lot of times when there was a Project Homeless Connect site, they seem to be entering information about people who stayed in a certain HIMIS participating emergency shelter, but you know, they were one disability off, so we weren't able to deduplicate. But if you see a pattern, you know, you can talk to the people who were at that Project Homeless Connect site or look at the surveys that you got and compare them to the HIMIS that you have and see if you feel that they are duplicates. Like I said, it's really up to you guys on how in detail you want to go, but we just thought we would start with this and then we can move forward from here. If you do decide to make any further deletions because they're duplicates, we just ask that on this duplicates page you just highlight them in yellow, and then we'll know to delete them off of the deduplicated data. Obviously, any changes you make to the sheet will affect the HDX summary. I do also know that some people, or if you have started, I know in the original email it said to list any further duplicates in yellow on the deduplicated tab. If you've already started it, it's fine. Really, we're just trying to specify which ones you're updating missing information for because of HDX and which ones you actually want deleted. So as long as you have them in two separate colors, really doesn't matter. They could be purple, they could be orange. As long as you let us know what the two colors are that you use if you're deleting a record or if you're updating a record, so that we don't delete one that you were actually just trying to update. That's the only reason why we were trying to change the colors. I think that that's all that I have, so I'm going to pass it. I'm sure you'll have questions, but we can answer those in a little bit. I'm just going to pass it back over to Jay to go over the next steps.
Thanks, Kaylin. So obviously this is a bit of information. We just wanted to make sure that you didn't get bored to sleep looking at all this Excel information, and we're going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation for a moment so that we can go over the next steps. Just put them in writing so that you can see them. We also are going to release not only this presentation as a recording, but also a PowerPoint that accompanies the presentation, which hopefully is about the same things that we've been talking about, so that will be available for you to take a look at as well. So next steps. There's a couple different categories of things that you might want to change. First of all, you might specifically want to change the type of data that you're using, okay, for this define who you define as homeless in your community and who Monarch should be actually counting in the total numbers that you see in your HDX summary page. Okay, so if your community would like to make a fundamental change to either which programs HIMIS information should be used for the count, or the types of places where people stayed that should be categorized as homeless on the night of the count. I'm just going to escape for a moment and go back to the Excel. These are the types of things that you might be seeing on the initial summary tab here in the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so if you want changes to any of these who are going to be categorized as homeless, write this list down here. If you don't want any of those or one of those to be counted as homeless, other than ones that are obviously and indisputably categorized as homeless under HUD's definition, then you can contact Monarch directly. That would need to be a phone call, that would need to be an email to address that with us, because that would affect what data we're working with as a baseline. Okay, also if you wanted to make a change to which programs were pulled from HIMIS, that would be a fundamental change to the amount and type of data and where we got that data. That would need to be something that you call or email us about. So that's one type of change that you might want to be making, and that's the next steps that you would need to be doing to address those with us. Okay, if you have a change that you want to request for further deduplication, so that's what Caitlin was describing with the duplicates tab. This is the next steps that we would ask you to take. Please be sure to highlight on the duplicates tab in yellow any records that your community believes should be removed as further duplicates. That's just the way we're going to be trying to separate further deduplication from trying to eliminate or update records that you're doing, as I'm going to show you on the next slide, just to make the HDX numbers add up. Okay, so this is for further deduplication. Highlight in yellow on the duplicates tab any further records that you might think need to be removed, and you can email that directly to us at Monarch and we will address that. Okay. Then the other type of next step that you might want to take would be you're looking at your HDX tab, the summary tab, and you're thinking, oh dear, my numbers don't add up. I'm not going to be able to update this. I'm not going to be able to submit this rather because we have numbers that aren't going to be acceptable for the HDX format. As Thais has said, you can either decide to delete incomplete records, which might alter your numbers downward, or you could identify the incomplete records and update the missing information. And there's two different ways that we're going to ask you to label those changes that you want to make relating to the HDX summary tab. If you want to delete the incomplete records, like Thais has said, please highlight that record on the de-duplicated data tab in blue. If you are updating a record so that it has the gender information, the ethnicity, or race information that was missing on the original HDX summary tab that we sent you, please highlight that record, again, on the deduplicated data tab in yellow. And like I said, this PowerPoint is not going to evaporate. It's going to be available, and you can refer to it if you have any questions regarding what exactly you're supposed to be doing to address this. Okay, so I do see that there are some questions for from everyone that have been submitted, but we're going to get to that in a moment. First, I just want to make sure that everybody knows the timeline that we're working with. Okay, so we are going to ask that all the requests that you want to make be received or be sent to Monarch by 5 p.m. on the 21st of March. Okay, in order to consider them and in order to turn them around in a timely fashion, because we know that we want to release our report and also get you your HDX info in time for HUD's deadline, we need that information by the 21st, and we are going to release back to you some records that have been updated by the 31st and official numbers to follow, okay, because we're actually not saying that these numbers are official yet. They have not yet been finalized with the final deduplication, and they haven't been officially reviewed by HMFA, who's providing this report to you. So we're going to wait to put the title official in front of everything until that so happens. Okay, I believe that that's the end of our presentation, but like I said, I'm going to leave this screen up, and folks have had some questions here. Let me see, we're going to address them in reverse order. Okay, so we had a question about if the numbers don't match, HDX won't allow the entry of data, and so working through the list isn't really a choice. That is true, exactly right. That's why we were addressing the HDX summary tab in that way, and we're making sure that everybody has the opportunity to decide whether they want to delete records or whether they want to update the records to make sure that it is it's going to add up, so you can submit it in HDX. And I think that addresses that. If there are any further questions on that, did you want to say something else?
Hi, this is Thaisa. I just want to also add, in each community you can decide how you want to address issues with HDX numbers not adding up. So as we stated before, you can delete records with missing information, or you can update the missing information. The other option is for you to do some analysis of how many people have identified themselves in a particular category. For example, if you have 50% of your people are males, 50% are females, you can make an estimate, make a guess about what the information should be for the missing for those missing information, and fill it in yourself. So there's a couple of different ways that you can handle it. This has actually always been an issue with every year with HDX data, so your community should look to handle it the way that it has handled it in the past.
We had someone else had a question regarding modifying the tables on the HDX summary page and whether we could add an unknown section to that. But unfortunately, the point is sort of moot, because the reason that we arranged those tables on the HDX summary page in that way is because HUD did update the requirements for reporting that they had. So HDX is going to actually be a different format this year, and this is the exact format that was prescribed by HUD. So we're not going to be able to adjust those tables, especially when we're reporting. So this is, the reason behind why it's been organized in the way it has been. Okay, looking at some other questions. We have a question that says, so youth-only households could be a duplication of a household without children because they are 23 years old and no 25-year-old living with them. We can't add them all together to get a total number. So I guess this is a question regarding the specific age of the household.
So for the HDX information, the family households only reflect those that are not youth households. So the family households and youth households are exclusive groups. Families are those families that are adults with children, an adult over the age of 18 and a child under the age of 17, and the youth households are those households that only have youth, no adults over the age of 25. So the information, the key is that the information should add up within each table shell, and doesn't necessarily have to add up across tables. So you should just deal with the missing information within each table shell. And I'm hoping that answers your question.
Okay. We also have some questions regarding additional information. If you do have specific questions, like I said before, regarding exactly what information is going to be used, or the information that we used, where it's going to be pulled from, if there are other folks, maybe you think that the list of HIMSS programs not only maybe included too many, maybe you think it excluded someone. If you have any of those questions or issues about where the data has been pulled from, or if there's additional or fewer sources that need to be used for this data pool that we should add to our list, please contact Monarch. You can either call or email us. Okay, so I'm hoping that the folks who are asking about the data sources will understand what next steps to take. Aside from that, we had, I think, have addressed the majority of questions that have been in the sidebar. If anybody does have another question, please do type it in now, and so that we can address it. Otherwise, like we had stated, don't panic about the different types of measures that we're asking you to take for each type of problem or issue that may arise. There is going to be this resource available. I think we'll probably message it out to you as well, the link to it on our website at the very least. I believe that that's what we needed to say. I don't see any other questions. If it would be helpful, I think that we can open up the audio lines if folks need to have a question. What you can do is, if you look in your sidebar, there is a column that offers you the option to raise your hand. Okay, so if you do decide you need to raise your hand, I can call on you and give you the audio capabilities if you have audio capabilities on your phone, or if you have a voice over internet protocol with a microphone, we can give you the ability to address everyone with your question and try to answer it for you. I do not see any hands, so if you have another question that everybody would be benefiting from, please show us the hand.
Hi, this is Pace again. I'm just going to make one clarification on the HDX data. If I can, sorry, I'm going to just switch over to the Excel sheet. Okay. So on the HDX summary tab, the first chart is the the families, and these families have has at least one person under 18 and somebody who's over the age of 18 in that adult family. And then we have the breakdown of those who are under the age of 18, those who are 18 to 24, and those who are over 18. Sorry, I have trouble scrolling through this. On the individual tab, this is all individuals that are identified, individuals over the age of 18 that are individuals or adult couples over the age of 18 that are on the street or in emergency shelters. And as you see, there's a breakdown between those who are 18 to 24 and those who are over the age of 24. The last tab is households with only children, and this tab is for households that are only children under the age of 18 with no corresponding adult associated with that household. So these are only households that have children under the age of 18 who are either in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or unsheltered. These are floating children that do not correspond to any other family. When I was speaking about checking the records, just in case, in this instance, these were children that we know are associated with a family that has an adult. However, the adult's age was not included, so the adult was not counted. The children were not counted in the first tab over here of the families. They were only counted in the Use Only tab because they do not have an adult associated with them.
I will just say that another way that this could come about, besides the head of household not having an age entered in on a SurveyMonkey form, is in HIMIS. If the person who's entering the data into HIMIS doesn't enter it correctly, and then they enter in the adult, and then they enter in the child as their own household, and that household ID doesn't come up as them together, they will come up as basically an unaccompanied youth. And I have seen that in quite a few programs. So if you do have some of those, you might want to check some of your HIMIS records and just see if it's really just a data entry error.
And also, as Thaisa had mentioned, these tables, these first three tables at the top here under the All Households header, they're mutually exclusive. Okay, so there are no individuals in any of the tables that overlap with the other tables. So if you need a count or an approximation based on your planning, based on wondering where your numbers are at this stage, if you want a total number of all individuals who were homeless, you need to add the numbers that correspond from each of the three tables together. Okay, so for instance, let's say you want the total number of individuals that were counted as homeless in your COC or in your boundaries on the night of the count. First, you need to add the total number of persons that were households with at least one adult and one child from this table. Then you need to add the total number of persons that were households without children, right? So this first table corresponds to families, essentially. This corresponds to individuals and adult couples. So you'd add these two numbers, and then you'd also need to add the total number of children in one-child households plus the total number of children in multi-child households, and you'd find your total number of folks who were counted as homeless in your jurisdiction. Okay, so that's the way that works. If you have any questions regarding any of the other things, let me just check and see if the magic of webinar has brought us any more questions. I don't see any hands raised. I don't see any more questions. If you do have further questions, I think we are definitely available for you. Okay, and hopefully you know where to find us. You can email us, and thank you so much for your time and energy. We really, really appreciate your attention, and we are looking forward to signing you off in good stead.
I just want to add in one last thing. As we go through the end of this deduplication process, we do intend at some point in the future, after we've completed our report, to hold a statewide debriefing session to talk with all of you about how this process worked. So we do ask that all of you organize within your communities and talk about what worked, what didn't work with the point-in-time count and the changes that we made, and talk about any further changes or suggestions that you have. We will be asking you all to come back together and share with us any changes or updates or ideas you have about how to improve this process and make it work a little bit smoother for all of you. So we do thank you for your participation in this process and working with us through this transition, and we hope to continue working with you and make this process as smooth and as seamless as possible. Thank you, everyone.